We have an incredible panel for everybody tonight to talk about all of the up-county issues.
So for those of you who know me, you know that this is not my voice. And also for those of you who know me, I am rarely left speechless. But tonight, it's really not a bad time for me to be speechless because we are here to listen to our experts, and we are mostly here to listen to you, to listen to everyone. I do want to give a shout out to Wafa from my office and Evan from David's office, who really put this together. You all know how much work something like this is, so please give them a round of applause. And with that, I'm going to save you from this voice and turn it back.
So I guess the next big question that I just wanted to get out, because we have several commissioners from Poolesville here, and then we'll go to Q&A after that. But is there an update both from the county and the state's perspective on White's Ferry, since it's been closed for over 2 years now?
You know, White's Ferry has been a very important link between the western Montgomery County area and Leesburg and areas in Northern Virginia for 200 plus years. It was devastating on New Year's Eve to learn that ferry had stopped. The first thing Montgomery County did is said, how do we acquire the land so that the ferry can get back in operation? We very quickly learned about the limitations of what we're able to do in a different state. And so we're not able to implement the bold solution that we thought we could just do and get this solved. So since then, we've discovered our limitations, but one of our abilities has been to continue the conversation and restart stalled dialogues as they've been going here. Many of you know that we've been working with Loudoun County for the first year or so of this effort closely with the idea of generating a statement of why this was an essential public connection so that Loudoun County could exercise the authority they have, or the Commonwealth of Virginia could exercise the authority they have to bring that landing into public operation and restart the service. Neither of those entities has been willing to do that, but we've continued to work with them to try to come up with creative solutions so that the ferry could restart. Me personally, and others in the county government have worked with the ferry landing owner in Virginia to try to structure financial arrangements that would allow their ferry to restart. We have had extensive conversation with the ferry owner, the previous ferry owner and the current ferry owner, Mr. Kuhn, about strategies he might take to get that ferry restarted and whether or not public acquisition of the ferry made a difference and whether the Virginia landing was possible. We're not actively looking at purchasing the ferry now because that does not change the dynamic in Virginia. Very recently, we encouraged the two parties to restart their conversation. County Executive Elrich called Chuck Kuhn to a meeting. Chuck proposed taking a new tact to negotiating with the Virginia landing owner, Ms. Devlin. That has recently also kind of stalled out. I, as a week or two ago, offered to arrange mediation between these two parties to see if they can come to a solution. We've engaged the Montgomery County Revenue Authority to see if there's some opportunity related to the ferry acquisition and some business arrangement in Virginia. So far, none of these have resulted in a solution. So the next phase of activity that we've begun undertaking is looking at options that kind of move the ferry out of the control of the parties who have kept it from operating. So we have had preliminary conversation with the National Park Service about whether the Maryland landing can move, and we've had a conversation with other owners in the Virginia side to see if there are other places the ferry can land. So we are beginning to evaluate those scenarios to see if there's an opportunity to restart the ferry if we can't get a solution with the parties who have kept it stalled for all this time. So unfortunately, I can't sit here and say in 6 weeks we'll have the ferry open. Other people have said that before. People who thought that they could solve this problem and have been unable to.
Nobody on the stage said that.
Nobody at this stage. And the other thing that I would say is that Secretary Wiedefeld has reached out to his counterpart in Virginia to discuss this. Again, no resolution from those conversations today, but the state administration has been far more engaged, including the lieutenant governor, in efforts to get this solved. But again, we sit here today without an active path to resolution, although we are changing the solution set, and maybe that change in solution set brings some pressure on the people who aren't allowing this to proceed to find a way to let it proceed. So, you know, your delegate here has been instrumental in organizing ongoing conversation about how to get this solved, but we are stuck in a situation where we don't have the authority as a Maryland jurisdiction, nor does the state of Maryland have the authority to take the action that we would need to take to decisively restart this, but we do everything we can to make that happen.
Hey there. Thank you. I'm Jim Brown. I'm the president of Poolesville Town Commissioners. Thanks to all of our people for being here. Can I hear it for Poolesville? Everywhere. Thank you. Thanks for being here, guys. We appreciate you. What it comes down to is this, Chris, and thank you again for addressing it. We've had many conversations. David, Marilyn, appreciate all the attention paid for this. It's three parts to this. One is, why don't we negotiate with what we can control, which is the ferry itself and the people on this side of the river? Virginia is not cooperative. Where are our answers coming from our people that we can control? Why don't we have a negotiation with just Chuck Kuhn and try to figure out a way to pay her what she wants for this, so then we get this boat across the river? Appreciate the billion-dollar discussions about the bridge, but the only other crossing going across that river is White's Ferry from Montgomery County to Virginia. Why don't we just negotiate with what we can control?
Jim, thank you for that. We have talked with Mr. Kuhn about this. Mr. Kuhn is unwilling to engage in the conversation to provide the per car fee that the other owner wants. And again, the interest in that side of the river has to be held by somebody other than the state and the county. So we have not been able to make that happen ourselves. And our partners in Loudoun County were also not willing to entertain the ongoing payment scheme that that owner has wanted. So we have attempted that, but we have not had success. And I have nothing more to say about it, because that's where we've been with that issue.
My name is Tim Goodfellow. I live in Montgomery Village. So here's my question. Knowing that the proposed Mid-County Highway Extended, or M83 highway, would destroy wetlands, floodplain, streams, steep slopes, and forest lands, harm over 500 residential dwellings along its path, and traverse and degrade 6 public parks, do you agree that transit enhancements and strategic selective widening of existing roadways and improving intersections to increase capacity and accommodate higher traffic volumes are viable, realistic alternatives to the M83?
I'll start by saying what the status of the project is. The status went through a facility planning exercise in Montgomery County earlier in the 2010 decade. That activity wound down in 2016. There was some National Environmental Policy Act documents that were developed for that. There were some requests for permits from the Army Corps of Engineers that were submitted at that time. Around that time, the department did a comparative study of exactly what you asked about, which was spot improvements on various corridors and bus rapid transit, and what benefits that provided compared to what M83 provided in terms of benefits. So that study concluded. The county council was briefed on that study. There was no decisive action about M83 at that time. At that time, the funding for the project had essentially run out, and there was no other work to advance or develop that project underway or began at that time. So this is around 2017. No other efforts to advance M83 have occurred since that time. The environmental documents and the permit applications with the federal agencies were abandoned and have not been renewed or have not continued since that time, and there's no intention to do that. There's no funding in the capital improvement program. There's no project for M83. The county council has taken action to not count the capacity of M83 in future master plans that are developed. Montgomery County had M83 removed from the regional long-range transportation plan. So at this point, there really is no M83 project. There is an M83 alignment that remains in the county's master plan of highways, but there is no project to make M83 happen. And there's no intention, at least from the Elrich administration, to start such a project. So I think you can be confident that M83 is not a project that's advancing at this time. That does not mean there aren't people who don't want M83 to happen. Clearly, that's true. And there's some legitimate reasons why those people would want M83 to happen. There's a lot of development in the Clarksburg area. Other transportation capacity has not been delivered to the extent envisioned in the master plan, which makes it difficult to get from Clarksburg to other parts of the county. There have been major improvements. There have been connections of Snowden Farm Parkway to Ridge Road. Ridge Road has been improved. Connections across to 355 have been made, and the Observation Drive project has been advanced in the capital improvement plan, and that Observation Drive project provides additional capacity to serve Clarksburg. Along with that, we have advanced the bus rapid transit project. We are funded to complete the design of that for the entirety of the project. We are working to understand what we can afford to build and have uncertainty about the availability of some of the project funds that are related to the 27495 project that we need to resolve. But bus rapid transit will make a difference in meeting the needs of Clarksburg. Observation Drive will make a difference in meeting the needs of Clarksburg. And spot improvements may or may not make a significant difference. There is not a laundry list of spot improvements currently planned, as had been evaluated in that study. But they could improve the capacity, but we are also concerned about the impact of those sorts of projects on access to bus rapid transit and pedestrian safety along these corridors, which is challenged as well. So that's a long answer to what was a relatively long question, but if I've left any parts unanswered, I'm happy to cycle back through some of that.
Okay, Tony Hausner. I live in Indian Spring, which is right next to the Beltway and Colesville Road. One question, one of the plans is to have toll lanes from the bridge up to the intersection of 495, 270. That will result in very high tolls ultimately, which favor the wealthy. I ask, that does not seem fair to me.
So, there are really, some of the things that we've heard over the last 9 months have been concerns with the tolling structure. And I think that for any proposal that moves forward, taking a close look at some of the, equity components of the tolling structure are really important. The lanes as they were studied in the environmental document they included an option for folks to stay in a general purpose lane. But I understand the point that you're making, and I understand the concerns. And those are things that we want to hear from everyone. I won't take a poll of who all in the room shares your concern, but I assume it's a good contingent of folks here. As far as the top side of the Beltway, that section was pulled out of the environmental study a few years ago, and so there are no active plans to pursue toll lanes there right now. We do know that there's probably a lot of other transportation needs that we should be focusing on more, things like some of the general safety concerns, and those are the things that Will's team at State Highway are going to continue to look closely at, because we know that there's a lot of transportation challenges that span beyond mobility. I think everyone always wants to get everywhere as quickly as possible, but something that I think is just as important, is more important for us, is the safety component. I think, having Joe here with his experience in this region, he knows about the safety challenges on an automobile perspective and also on a pedestrian and bicyclist perspective. And so when you talk to any of us or talk to our secretary or to the governor about what's important, I think safety is what's going to come out. So I just want to emphasize that we do have these projects that have these high price tags and have a lot of visibility associated with them. And your comments and feedback on those are so important to us. But I also want to give credit to the workforce that we have that is focused on so many things other than that every day. And I think that, just want to acknowledge your team. So, and to your points about, toll lanes expanding to more parts of the network, it's a possibility. And I think that there are areas where an integrated toll network has provided some benefits in other states and other regions. So we're going to look to those. We're going to see what we can learn from those. But right now, we are in this period of listening, and so I do want to thank you for your feedback.
I'm Andy Gallant. I live in Rockville, north of Exit 6, 175 feet from I-270. I share concerns about the toll lanes, which we've been following. So I'm just going to boil it down to one comment and 3 questions. The one comment is, we were told in a meeting like this by an MDOT official that the reason that Upper 270 was dropped from the whole project was it would not pay for itself. So an unstated need was financial viability, and I think that also affected the toll calculations. But that's getting into inside baseball. Question 1, whatever happened to the Capital Beltway Agreement, and will we ever see it? Actually, it's an accord. Question number 2, Maryland is spending money on road construction in Virginia. Where is there information on that? What's the amount? How is it all related? It's going to be in at least one place, 2 places, possibly including the Wilson Bridge, and as well as what's going on now with the next stuff. Lastly, why can't the innovative congestion management issues, approaches, not just metered ramps, but lane improvements, restriping, why can't that be applied in the near term to Upper 270?
It is something that we use in looking at all of the projects that we do, and oftentimes when we apply for federal grants, looking at benefit cost analyses is an integral part of knowing whether or not we're going to be awarded those types of funds. So I don't want to discredit financial viability, but I think that there was some terminology and some statements made about the previous project, things that you probably heard about, no net cost to the state, that the lanes were going to be constructed in a way that did not involve that state funding. Certainly, we've moved away from that understanding. There are a lot of things that have changed within the marketplace, things that have changed within the realities of what it's going to take to deliver this infrastructure. And so I think that we're starting a new script when it comes to what financial viability means for the project, and we're going to have to get a lot more creative with it and acknowledge that there is going to be some state funds that are going to be needed to at least match federal funds if that's the route that we end up going with things. To get to your question about the Capital Beltway Accord. So that was something that was announced 2019. It's a cold day in November, December. And so I will say that a lot of progress was made in negotiating certain terms between the states that would eventually lead to the construction of a new American Legion Bridge. Unfortunately, those conversations did not yield a final agreement. And so at this point, any conversations with Virginia are going to need to pick back up, maybe not exactly where they left off, but they're going to need to be reinitiated. And we certainly have a lot of work to do on our side, probably before we're ready to have those conversations. But we have a really strong team who's engaged with partners in Virginia on a number of topics, and I feel very confident that we will be able to re-engage on conversations about the bridge in a way that's productive and hopefully very transparent for everyone to have an understanding of what both sides are contributing and offering in moving that piece of infrastructure forward. Your questions about construction in Virginia. Right now, I think it's probably pretty early on in our understanding of what a potential project would look like, but I think I hear what you're saying about the use of Maryland dollars across the river, and I think that that's something that we're going to need to be transparent about once we know exactly what would be moving forward from an infrastructure perspective. You did also reference the Woodrow Wilson Bridge, and I think that there's been a lot of interest in some studies that the Virginia Department of Transportation is pursuing over there. And we are very much engaged in those conversations. They're very early on, but the first stakeholders that we really wanted to talk to in regard to that study were our partners in Prince George's County, because I think it was really important to understand the potential impacts of the types of concepts that are being studied over there. So just know that we are working very closely with the partners on our side, and that those are going to be the conversations that are going to be prioritized before we start talking with any partners across the river about what happens next there. We think that there are some long-standing commitments about some multimodal considerations for that bridge, and then we want to make sure that those are studied in full through any process that occurs on that span. And then innovative congestion management. I think that that is a great opportunity for a lot of parts of the network. I think that you've seen benefits from innovative congestion management on that middle section of 270, and we don't want that to be a one-time only type of project that we implement. I think we need to be realistic about what we're calling short, medium, and long term, because I think that studying those types of improvements could be woven in just as much with that northern section environmental study that will be kicking off. I don't want to get too far ahead of things because you have to be very specific when you're following a federal process, but I don't know if Will could speak a little bit to maybe the different types of improvements that we're considering, but I know that there's not a meeting that I have with the county executive when he is not a proponent of those types of improvements on other parts of the network on the interstate system, and I think that we're starting to really have some data that shows that they're useful and that they work. And so I think if we can continue to explore those along these interstate networks, I think that'll be an important part of programs that we move forward with.
Part of that is really to put all multimodal options on the table. SHA is going to partner with the Maryland Transit Administration on looking at what various kind of alternatives would be there. And some of those demand management solutions and congestion management solutions will be on the table as part of the alternatives analysis as we kind of get into that study and we start to look at what options could work there. Can't at all project what may actually get carried forward into the study, but we will certainly look for the input from the public on what may be a viable solution and look forward to further feedback on that.
Hello, I'm Monty Gingrey. I live in Potomac, Maryland. I use White's Ferry quite a bit. This has been going on for 2 3/4 years, soon to be 3 years, dead stop. I know you all have put in effort to it. Secretary Weidenfeld to the town of Poolesville suggested that they were going to do Secretary of Maryland, Secretary of Virginia, direct talks. Governor Moore to Governor Youngkin. Has Governor Moore talked to Governor Youngkin, preferably face-to-face, and get the thing solved? It is eminent domain, but eminent domain is the police power of the state. They can do it. It's called a quick take. They can pay the money in the court. This is a vital public use and need. 800 to 1,000 cars a day use that crossing. It worked for 200 years. And the point is, it's gotten to the point where you all have done your best efforts. We applaud that. The point is, it's time for the governor of one state to talk to the governor of the other state and get the deal done. If you don't get the deal closed, we will take the land.
I cannot confirm that a governor-to-governor face-to-face meeting has occurred, but I can confirm for you that I owe our lieutenant governor a report out of this meeting tonight, and part of my report out to her tonight is going to be on the emphasis that I heard from this community, from everyone here on the importance of this topic and on that request.
Barbara Sofel from Kensington. I just wanted to clarify, because it wasn't clear, I thought, from your presentation, that the announcement from MDOT on the I-495 project was that it would add 2 toll lanes on each side of the Beltway, from the American Legion Bridge up to the I-270 spur, then onto I-270 spur as well. That's phase 1. And phase 2 would be dealt with later, the southern part at the lower end of I-270. Now, according to the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission, when they looked at the environmental review on this project, they found and said in a letter to MDOT that the project will not ease congestion in the general lanes. All it would do is move the bottlenecks from the American Legion Bridge to the inner loop of the Beltway between Silver Spring and Bethesda and into Prince George's County, and on the upper, and on I-270 north of Gaithersburg. So why are we going through with a project that is expensive and which has enormous environmental damage when it won't solve the problem for the people who remain, the vast majority who remain in the general toll lane, in the general lanes, who can't afford to get into the toll lanes?
So, spent a lot of time with that environmental document, and I'm aware of feedback from Maryland National Capital and from others who are very concerned about some of those transitional areas and potential bottlenecks. And I think, traffic forecasting is a very challenging endeavor. And when we look through these environmental documents, we often have our base condition, and then we have some different forecast years that we're looking out into. And I think that when you look out into a 2040, a 2045 for your forecast year, there are some significant challenges once you look at if the managed lanes were to be implemented and nothing else were to be done on other parts of those roadways, of what the conditions would be. So I'm not going to dispute the data there. But what I can provide as a little bit of what the current thinking is in terms of how to look at those transition zones in a way that something could be done that is as minimally impactful as possible would be something like the innovative congestion management solutions, to try to look at something that provides some relief where you do have a bottleneck type of situation. With the project being bifurcated into like a southern and a northern component, I do not have all those answers for you yet, but I think the bottleneck concern in those transitional areas and your points are very well taken, and those are the type of answers that we're going to have to come up with better answers for you all on before we would move forward with this type of investment.
I'm not going to ask you a 270 question, although I do have more. And I'm not going to ask you a Clarksburg transit-specific question, because, Chris, you addressed some of those. I want to ask you about pedestrian safety, actually, since we're talking multimodal tonight. I'm wondering, from the county's perspective, but also from the state's perspective, if you can talk to us more about what's being done up county specifically.
There are a number of safety-related initiatives underway in this part of the county. You all should be aware, and maybe you're not, that the county submitted a Safe Streets for All grant application a few months ago to the Federal Highway Administration for $10 million of safety-related investments in the Germantown Town Center, Seneca Valley High School Mark Station area. Those are a combination of sidewalk improvements, bikeway improvements, lighting improvements, and traffic control improvements, and some upgrades of the measures we've already done related to Middlebrook Road and the bikeway that's been installed on Middlebrook Road. We are also completing our school safety reviews in this part of the county. We did, I'm trying to find the right page of my notes, we did 7, I believe, school safety assessments in the last year at Seneca Valley High School, Roberto Clemente Middle School, Krista McAuliffe Elementary School, Northwest High School, Copper Mill Elementary School, Germantown Elementary School, and Great Seneca Elementary School. And we've been implementing improvements from a number of the safety reviews that we did in the previous years: Waters Landing Elementary School, Cabin Branch Elementary School, and Snowden Farm, Wells Middle School, Snowden Farm Elementary, Clarksburg High School. So those things are underway. We've been coordinating with the state on implementation of recommendations from those studies on the state facilities. We've also been conducting general road safety audits and developing recommendations that are largely around improved traffic control and lighting on Montgomery Village Avenue. We are proposing a series of always stops on East Village Avenue in response to significant speed-related concerns. We would like to get more latitude in the next upcoming General Assembly session to do more automated speed enforcement and to explore a graduated fine structure for automated speed enforcement. Obviously, there needs to be some leeway in the automated speed enforcement, but does it need to be 11 miles per hour? And is a $40 fine for a really significant violation robust enough? It's not our opinion that it is. So we'll be pursuing that additional authority for Montgomery County Police Department. We don't run that program, the police does, but we will be trying to get that authority in the upcoming legislative session, because right now it is really constrained on the types of roads we can do that. In addition to that, there are a number of capital projects that have significant pedestrian, bike, and safety-related elements. The Frederick Road Bike Path, which is not complete in our mind, but is probably complete in the community's mind because the facility's there and open, and extending that with the support from the State Highway Administration and grant money further north up towards the historic district of Clarksburg. You're not Tim, you're Dan. Dan and his team are in the process of completing improvements on Clarksburg Road right now that are really geared on speed management and providing for safe crossing opportunities. So we're not going to hit every single hazardous location at one time, but we have a lot of work going on to try to address the issues you've raised.
Vision Zero, we are Vision Zero state, the state of Maryland. I take it to heart, we take it to heart. I track every single multimodal fatality in the state of Maryland. More specifically, or previously, it was specifically to Montgomery County. I have a list. Every single time it happens, we activate a full fatality infrastructure review. We really want to understand and nail down exactly what the circumstances were, what happened, why it happened, and how we can prevent that in the future. So that is something that we're taking statewide, and we really want to make an impact. So we want to bring those numbers down. As far as multimodal safety as a whole, I'm going to speak in generalities here, but we do have something new called the context-driven toolkit, or a context toolkit. We want to implement right turn hardening statewide programmatically. We've already begun updating all of our crosswalks to continental or high visibility crosswalk markings. LPIs, I tried to develop a list. Sorry, that's going to keep happening. Keep me on my toes. Leading pedestrian intervals, I tried to develop a list. We already have 33 that I counted that we've done already in Montgomery County in the last 12 months. That's only going to escalate or elevate over the years, so that's going to happen more and more. Coupled with the leading pedestrian intervals, we'll do no turn on reds. That's going to be something that we'll be implementing programmatically as well. Channelizing right turns, we're going to try to eliminate those as well. I guess more specifically to your question, wherever the gentleman is. Up County, what type of improvements are we proposing or are we initiating? As Will said, as the administrator said, we have something called PSAP, or Pedestrian Safety Action Plan. Maryland 124, City of Gaithersburg, Mid-County Highway, we have one of our PSAP, or Pedestrian Safety Action Plan, priority corridors. There's a whole slew of improvements that we're excited to get moving on. Things such as shared use paths off-road, signal reconstructions, right turn hardening, all upgraded crosswalks, no turn on reds where feasible, the elimination of auxiliary lanes, narrowing the roadway, traffic calming such as lane narrowing, speed limit reductions. To that effect, speed limit reductions, we're also implementing those wherever feasible, programmatically, statewide. So that's just a little bit of a tidbit of our new perspective, our new paradigm shift, and we hope it makes a real impact in the future. So thank you.
My name is Zadiz, and I'm a resident here in Germantown. And I've heard a lot of great, things from tonight, but one thing that stands out is the fact that we're in a climate emergency, and we're in a climate emergency right now, and we don't need more roads to basically, people need to mobilize to their jobs, to their work, to school, but there's other more transit and environmentally friendly solutions to move around. Like, for example, we don't need to expand the Beltway or I-270. We don't need M83, but we do need, for example, to remove M83 from the all master plans, to expand the MARC train services in the Brunswick line, to allow dedicated bus lanes for bus rapid transit, and also to open White's Ferry. I myself have family that lives and friends that live in Loudoun County. It is a little bit ridiculous to have to drive twice as much to get to Loudoun County just because White's Ferry is not open, when we could cut down the time, cut down the greenhouse gas emissions if White's Ferries were to open. So my question to all of you is, what are you doing to line up with our both county and state level climate action plans and goals, and ensure that our transportation system is reliable and up to our 21st century standards?
We do have a lot to share, and we can set aside discussion of highway projects, but I do want to let you know what we are doing. And if you've had a chance to spend any time or listen to Governor Moore talk about his passion and commitment for this topic, you will know that it's very real, and that there's not a time when we don't talk about that Maryland needs to be the greenest state in the nation. And we've set some very ambitious goals for how we get there, and it is also what he refers to as an all of the above approach, and that involves not just the agencies that typically are involved in climate matters, but it's really every department looking at what they can do. We fortunately are one that gets to do a lot, and so I will ask Joe to talk through a bit more of the portfolio that his team manages, the Secretary's office, but know that we are looking at the things that you have referenced. I understand, your point is very well taken on the ferry connection to this topic as well, but we are looking at everything from how to provide more, options for non-motorized travel. We are looking for how to make our fleet cleaner within our state fleet. We are looking for how we can make our transit vehicles cleaner. We are looking for ways to expand and enhance the transit network that we provide. But I don't want to steal too much of the work that Joe's team has done in just the past 9 months is tremendous. Just building the team, I'll let him talk a little bit about that. He's built a tremendous team. These are positions that typically did not occur within a DOT before, and they've become integral to our operations and our mission.
My name is Jerry Garson. I live in Potomac, Maryland. A little over 20 years ago, we had tried buses from Germantown and Bethesda to Tyson's Corner. We initially had 211 buses per day, but never had more than 5 passengers per bus. They then discontinued the bus routes. What has changed to indicate that there are more riders on this route? We also note that on peak traffic on the American Legion Bridge occurs on Saturday, where I guess there are a large number of people commuting to their jobs.
What we do know is that we have partners on the other side who are really willing to have that conversation with us. And I think that this is the type of opportunity that, given the goals of this administration and the balance that we know we need to provide throughout the region and the options, we can't expect people to consider a mode shift if we don't offer one. So I think that based upon the interest that we are hearing on both sides here and from a lot of different partners, that it's a conversation that I think is definitely worth having.
If you look at our investment program, the vast majority of that program is focused on reducing the carbon impact of the transportation system. There's a huge amount of investment in bus rapid transit, which is necessary to move people for locally and regional trips, and this is the tie to what Samantha was talking about. For that connection to be successful, it's going to have a reach beyond those single terminal points in both ends of this network so that people can get to that connection better. And it has to have a congestion advantage over the private vehicle car. So we need to have bus lanes to make that trip available, and perhaps as bold as thinking about bus or HOV lanes in advance of a reconstruction of the American Legion Bridge to give that option a real advantage over sitting in your car to make that trip. A couple other things for this community. We are advancing the Boyd's Transit Center, and I know there's a lot of people who are also interested in the restoration of the mill. But the transit center is going to allow that connection from the Clarksburg community to Mark and not rely upon the 7 or so parking spaces that are there today, but to do it in a bus, which we can't do now. The other thing I want to make sure people are aware of is the Ride On Reimagined effort that our transit division has been working on, and there are recommendations specifically focused on improving transit access to the up-county with flex zones in Poolsville, Damascus, all of those linking to the Germantown Transit Center, which then you can make the connection to the 355 bus rapid transit, which we really do want to get built, all of it. We really want to get the whole thing built, and to the MARC services that you heard about earlier. And the last thing I want to say about this is if you look at our focus is on advancing projects and programs that deal with the climate emergency in our environment, that deal with equity and getting people access to opportunity and allowing that opportunity to develop in our key activity centers and on safety. So we don't have a lot of projects that are road focused. We have a couple because there are legacy issues that need to be addressed about where development has had and the lack of capacity. But if you look at our program, almost all of it is focused on those projects that advance that agenda. And the last thing that I would say is that the other element that's really important, and I know the state has been working hard on this as well, is reducing the impact of the privately owned vehicle fleet on climate. And I own a plug-in hybrid and an electric car, and we need more people to go that route, and we need to have the opportunity for charging available, although you can do it at home, not everybody can do it at home, so we need to have the options everywhere. And one of the things we're looking at is on-street public charging in neighborhood areas where people don't have access to driveway space or garages, and trying to come up with a structure that would allow common ownership communities and others to have charging opportunity available public in those communities, rather than having to travel to a shopping center or public facility where that charging is available. So that's something that we're going to be working on in the coming year, to try to have a program where condo associations, homeowners associations, or others could have an avenue to have a community charging facility in their neighborhood. So keep your eyes open for that. We're hoping to have a program for that in the near future.
Great.
I know that Bob Eisinger has been working really hard on the monorail, and I've had many conversations with him over the years about it, and I know that there are, you know, in my layman's opinion, there are some potential opportunities for the monorail. I think it serves a lot of potential purposes, and I'm just wondering, you know, where is the state in evaluating the monorail when it comes to the American Legion Bridge? My understanding is the bridge was built, or the bridge will theoretically be built to accommodate the possibility of something like that, and just kind of trying to figure out where the state's head is on the monorail.
He was a great partner with the state in the planning phase of the American Legion Bridge portion of the project, to help us to look at ways that the future bridge could be compatible with something like a monorail solution. So it's not currently integrated through that environmental document, but where some of the plans were is that it would be compatible in the future. So that's kind of on the bridge side, looking at it from a compatibility perspective, and then with looking at the northern section, I think that's where we have our next big opportunity area for something like monorail. And I think that looking at the northern section as that real integrated solution is where we would be headed next. So, you know, monorail has the potential to move people, you know, very quickly and efficiently, and that's ultimately the goal of the study that we're going to be looking at. So can't speak too far to get ahead of the scoping process for that northern section, but looking at an integrated transit and highway solution is, I think, where our heads are at with that, and so that's where monorail would come back into the conversation.